Hi everyone, and welcome to I Am Illuminated Tarot, a place for you to better connect with and illuminate your own personal spiritual importance. So hi everyone, I'm Lauren Ashoff Hickman. If you're new to my channel, I am a tarot reader and a writer of spiritual fiction. Hi and welcome to this video. I decided to create this video about really emphasizing the importance of understanding your own moon sign placement in your birth chart, because I've found that in my own personal practice, it's incredibly crucial to how I help other individuals really reconnect with themselves on an emotional level or heal emotional trauma that they might have experienced actually since childhood and kind of carried that with them up into their adult, current day, everyday experience. So I'm going to actually be using, as I go through this video, one of my favorite books. It's the Chart Interpretation Handbook by Arroyo. I absolutely love his writings on astrology and how to read a birth chart, because he takes more of a kind of therapist's approach. He actually was a psychologist who was a avid practitioner of working with individuals one-on-one in a therapy type setting, but utilizing the key elements of the individual's birth chart to actually help open up certain kind of psychological areas for the individual. And I think what he did was, and his writings are very illuminating. So I'm going to be using this as a guide simply because his writings are so succinct and to the point that it's kind of, there's no point of rewriting, reinventing the wheel. But I'm going to go right into moon sign placement. So first of all, the beauty of your moon sign placement is that much unlike the ascendant or trying to find your rising sign, you do not need to know your exact birth time. You'd still need to know your birth date, but you don't need to know the birth time or the location. It's simply, when you think about being able to find your sun sign, anytime the sun is in a specific zodiac placement, it's going to be, obviously the moon is going to be in a direct opposition to that. So it's a beautiful way for you to kind of see the other half of your, what I would like to call your spiritual experience, that's tied directly to your sun sign placement. This is kind of like the shadow part of yourself, the part of yourself that where a lot of your subconscious motivations, I like to call it that place for ourselves that when we're kind of just pushed into action, it's how we respond instinctually and intuitively, actually, because when we think about the moon in general, and we kind of tie that back to the moon and Cancer is ruled by the moon. Cancer is a sign that's very specifically tied to their intuition. And so that's really and their emotions as well. That's kind of Cancer's superpower, is really leading from that place of emotional connection to the self. And so we bring that into, all of us have that ability through our moon sign to connect emotionally through our intuition to ourself. But what can happen is that because this is a part of ourself that we actually feel the closest to. In fact, when I read their birth charts or I illuminate for them what their moon sign placement is, it's kind of this like aha moment of, oh my gosh, yeah, that's what I was always getting teased about as a kid, or the traumatic issue in my personality that I felt I always had to kind of fight against, and what caused me a lot of issues up until this point. And it also tends to be the part of ourselves that we then hide when we get older. And that's really where we end up then kind of putting up that emotional wall between us and connecting emotionally to our life experience in an authentic way, where we feel like, this is me. I get to express who I am in a healthy way, and it's received in a healthy way from others around me. It's not only just important to know your moon sign, it's also important to see where it falls in your chart, meaning specifically where in your house placement, what house does it fall within? Because that really shows where, depending on the house placement, where there is a level of emotional insecurity, the more that you kind of shy away from the traits of your moon sign. So I'll go a little bit into that. I'm not going to dive too deep into the houses and explaining that in this video, because that's going a little too deep. I want to make this video kind of short and sweet and concise so that everybody can understand a little bit more about their moon sign placement. So I'm going to go sign by sign to kind of show how it can manifest kind of in a negative way, and then how you can, once coming to terms with it on an emotional level, actually utilize it to your advantage and emotionally connecting in a beneficial way to your life experience. I do feel that this truly, the moon sign and coming to terms with the trauma around it and then embracing it, is one of the most important kind of keys to unlocking spiritual health in as we get older in our adult life. Okay, so we're going to start with Aries. I'm just going to start with the first sign in the zodiac, which is Aries. And Aries is a sign that is really specifically about the I am. So what you might notice if you have a moon sign placement in Aries is that you're going to react aggressively, impatiently, forcefully, directly, and competitively. Now, when we think about that, you know, in the adult world, sometimes that can be actually what people want you to display. You know, you want to be this kind of high-powered CEO individual. Well, yeah, you got to be aggressive and you got to, you know, forcibly or directly communicate. But how this can manifest when you're younger is you might come across as being told you're bossy. You might be told that you get angry too quickly, that you're too impatient and to calm down. Depending on, again, the house placement, this might be where kind of anger disrupts a certain part of your experience. So for instance, if you had, let's say in the fourth house, this would be the house that really ties back to the family and home, that you might have had a lot of kind of aggressive outbursts in the home or anger issues between you and kind of authoritative figures like your parents. Now, what really I like to focus on when I'm first illuminating for someone their moon sign and the importance of it is you look at what you need to feel secure with that placement. So there is an element that says responds to experience and environment with a single pointed release of energy. It says a confident, action-oriented sense of self focused on new experiences, and combative qualities can hinder attainment of security. So there's a certain level of needing to come to terms with kind of the autonomous quality of your experience and really understanding that it's not about fighting against others to maintain your authority. It's about a healthy expression of forward assertion of who you are and not hiding that part, but instead really being able to say, I'm going to be most secure when I am healthily expressing from a place of I am. And I am able to do so in a way that is clear and assertive, without feeling ashamed, because we do need people to bring that level of assertiveness and competitiveness, but it doesn't have to be in a way that's combative. It can be in a way where, if let's say this was your child, and I do find that this is actually one of the most important things too, and really being able to, for those of you who have young children, really understanding what your child needs to feel secure and how you can possibly anticipate and then I'm going to use the word combat, but kind of anticipate and then help them with the potential for, what we would call like personality issues, like where they might lash out or where they might get overly sensitive or where they might need an extra level of support. So if you have someone in your life that has an Aries moon placement, you really want to work with letting them know that you understand who they are, working with allowing them to feel that they have the autonomous authority to make decisions for themselves and to show and to take action from a place that supports who they see themselves as, but that you then also let them know that no, the whole world is not trying to come and get you. The whole world is not, it's not a competition between anybody but you and yourself. And that can help kind of bring that level of security back to them to say, yeah, I feel secure in expressing who I am, but I know that everyone should be given that opportunity as well. And that I learned that most people are not here to fight against me, because that can be the kind of the Aries energy is like you're ready to go to war in an instant over anything. And it's a realization that most people don't like war, which is a good thing. I mean, in today's world, we might maybe say that's not the case. It seems like everybody's ready to go to war, but those are the few and far between. And then most people just kind of get stuck in the middle of it. Most people don't want to have that kind of, direct one-on-one combative energy. Okay, so now we're going to move into interpretive guidelines for Moon in Taurus. Now, I am a Taurus sun sign. I also have my Mars placement in Taurus. So I know what it's like to work with Taurus energy. It's slow, it's steady, but it's also one that can take on and kind of bear the burden of a lot of hard work. So when you think about the sign of Taurus, they are the bull, and the bull can be kind of hooked up to a cart, so to speak. So there is a potential here for not only will the possibility for you to kind of be the person who might have, when you were younger, been told like, hey, hurry up, make that decision. How come it's taking you so long to process this information? But you could also have gotten into a place where you might have almost slipped into a victimization type kind of cycle where you just kind of kept bearing the burden of things. This would be where someone maybe when you were in class said, hey, do you want, just elected you to say, hey, do you want to take on, leading the group? And you're like, okay. And then all of a sudden, then someone else wants to, give you their homework to do. And then all of a sudden you're doing everybody's work and you're like, well, I guess this is just what I have to do because I can do it. And slow and steady wins the race. So there can be this element with when there's an unhealthy an unhealthy expression of this placement can be that not only are you kind of too slow to react, especially on your own behalf, meaning that you'll kind of just keep taking on responsibilities and bearing the burden of extra work, but that then in addition to that, it kind of then becomes internalized where then you internally are slow to change because you are so busy having to continually be focused on all of the external work and then kind of, again, that emotional victimization quality that comes with that, where everybody just sees me as the one who will do the work and they don't really appreciate it. Or they tell me to step up the pace when they've given me all this, So in order to really feel secure for someone who has a Taurus moon sign placement, there's an emphasis on possessiveness and a deep need for security and control. Okay, so I'm going to just read this, actually, I'm sorry, as it states. It says, emphasis on possessiveness and a deep need for security and control can inhibit emotional flow. So there can be this element here of wanting, because the Taurus placement is so slow and steady and is adverse to change, there's that stubborn quality, that there can be this element of, but I want to try to control everything. And that's where that can tie back then to the individual electing themselves to take on all of the extra work, because then they can control it, or it can be theirs. And then this can be kind of, again, it almost like piles on top of itself. The cycle gets kind of broader and broader and deeper into this. People see me as the one who takes on all the extra work, but I'm also the one that's choosing to control the situation. And so in order to allow someone who has the moon sign placement in Taurus to feel secure, there needs to be a strong routine, a strong emphasis, especially if they're a child and in a home life, to really allow that individual to understand that that not everything is in their control, and that it's not on them to control the situation, but to allow them to kind of bring it back to themselves and work with them in how to control their reactions to change. That is actually how you can better control and, kind of combat those feelings of anxiety that happen around control and possessiveness. It's also one, too, where for those of you who are, an adult and you have a Taurus moon sign placement, this can also be, too, where you really dive into the spiritual work, because Taurus is a very spiritual sign. Its card in the tarot is the Hierophant, the High Priest. So there's a feeling here of really diving into taking a look at yourself, understanding that you are slow to change internally, but looking at it from a broader context of where do you need to change, and kind of continually allowing some type of spiritual practice to be in there to give you that foundational faith in yourself to make the changes that you need. Okay, so now we're going into Gemini. So for those of you who have moon placement in Gemini, you are going to react quickly, perceptively, changeably, with unending curiosity. So this could be where some of you might have, as a child, been told like, hey, like you were the child who said why, but why, but why, but what about this, but what about that? And people are like, whoa, too much, just tone it down. We don't need to know that much. And it could also be that maybe you were also the kind of changeable character, that you were the one who maybe today was really interested in one thing and then tomorrow had no interest in it at all. And you were kind of maybe forced, you always felt like you were forced to have to maybe redirect your energy towards something that you didn't care about. Now, what's also interesting too is that Gemini is a sign that is directly tied to Mercury, which is a planet that's focused on communication. So for many of you, there's a deep need, a security around needing to express how you're feeling, needing to communicate your emotions for you then to be able to actually feel connected to them. There could actually be this kind of cutoff between you and feeling, because it's almost like you get stuck in your head too much. And what can be difficult when you're younger, when we aren't really fully able, and already we're not able to communicate in a mature way. But in addition to that, if we're not taught how to kind of communicate in a healthy way about our emotions, this can be where you're trying to constantly talk about how you're feeling, and either others kind of disregard it and just think you're just talking to talk, and shut you down, and that actually kind of shuts you down from connecting to your emotions. Or it can be where you're talking about your emotions in a way that might be off-putting to others. So you might be saying, well, I'm angry right now and I just want to punch something. And people are like, whoa, you're aggressive. Like, why would you want to punch? And then they might run and tell another, a teacher, he said he wants to punch something. And then suddenly what you were just trying to kind of think, it's almost like you're thinking emotionally out loud, and can be taken in the wrong context. So what can then happen is that then you become kind of emotionally scattered, because you're not actually processing your emotions. You're kind of just allowing them to kind of float within, and you're not able to actually kind of between your mind and your emotional core kind of make that connection. So you can kind of not really know how you feel. There might be this kind of like, do I feel this way or do I feel that way? Do I feel this way? And there's like a lack of connection to your intuition. So for someone who has a moon sign placement as an adult, a great practice for you would be to really focus on creating a meditative practice where you simply just state out loud to yourself how you're feeling, or journaling. Because any type of communication, we always forget, or we don't always, but we can forget that writing is actually a fantastic way to communicate, and especially for us to communicate kind of back to ourselves. We get to write it out and then we get to kind of process. So journaling is a fantastic way to really build in that outlet for you to communicate what you're feeling. It's also a great practice just to express it out loud. But then also practicing, and I find this very helpful even for myself. I don't have a moon sign in place in Gemini, but I find just in general, because I have a lot of Gemini placements in my chart, that finding outlets for just communication in general, learning how to better communicate from that place of emotions outward is very beneficial, whether it's doing something like this and just speaking, to the crowd through YouTube, or whether it's joining one of those public speaking groups. It can be very helpful in just learning a better ways to, again, communicate, not push aside your need to communicate your feelings, but find a healthier way to do so. All right. So now we have, and for those of you who have children who have moon sign placements in Gemini, it's just really about making sure that you teach them the importance of emotions and communicating their emotions, and then allow them that space and that room to do so without kind of shutting them down. And if their interest changes, that's okay from day to day. That is just part of who they are. That curiosity is actually what's going to eventually, when they get older, lead them to be that really kind of innovative spark. It'll also lead them to be the one who can in a business kind of work environment, be the one who kind of thinks outside the box. So it's a very beneficial quality. All right, moon sign in Cancer. Now, Cancer, as I said before, you are ruled by the moon. So this is kind of like a double dip of that moon emotional connection to your intuition. It's like you really have kind of a superpower almost of feeling from your intuition. So you're going to react with sensitivity, sometimes oversensitivity, because you're so in your feels, as we would say it, and with protectiveness towards yourself and others. So there can be this quality of wanting to almost be that kind of mothering energy to someone outside of yourself or to yourself. So this would be the child who is always wanting to like help the child who falls down on the playground, or is constantly taking something to heart, where somebody just makes an offhand comment and the child runs over and is like, oh, that person told me that I'm shorter than they are, so I must be too short, and it hurts my feelings, and there's this feeling of, because they're so connected to their intuition too, they might also be very defensive around that. Like, I feel this way, I want to do this, and I'm going to do it. And it might come across kind of, out of left field for some individuals who are interacting with this person. Now, it says they feel secure when nurturing and being nurtured by others. So this is like when you think about the little child with their baby doll, they want to be in a nurturing environment, but they also want to be able to express their need to nurture others, but not in a way that comes across as controlling. So there really needs to be that outlet for this individual to be able to do that. This is the individual who would love to, pamper someone in their life. They would love to be the one who, makes the lunches for everyone to take, or is constantly the one coming over and giving everyone the hug and the kiss and the, kind of touchy-feely. So if you have a child who's like this, it's very helpful to provide them with that from yourself, to be the touchy-feely kind of example, and then allow them to find an outlet to do that in return. Now, they can be overprotective of their emotions, and this can lead to extremely, kind of an extreme flip-flop in moods. And there can be this strong memory of past emotions that will continually kind of come up. This is the kind of downside to this, is that they're truly kind of like the archetype of, I can't forget. Once it's said, it'll, I can never forget that. It will never go back in the box. It's, whenever I felt hurt by this individual, and I will never forget that they hurt me, or I will never forget that this experience hurt me in this way. And where this can kind of become really difficult as we get older is that this individual starts to live more and more in the past, and more tied, their current experience is tied directly more to wounds of the past than positive emotions in the present. And so if you have a moon sign in Cancer, this is really looking to focus on releasing your emotional tie to kind of traumatic events that happened in the past, identifying them, identifying how they impact you in your present day situation, and how you can start to release yourself from kind of that mental entrapment that comes when we are emotionally continually tied to something negative that we can't change. Now, how we can change that is by changing our perspective on it, then releasing it, and then focusing our emotional attention into the present moment. Okay, and another good outlet for an adult with the moon sign in Cancer is journaling as well, because you really get a chance to kind of have that emotional cathartic purge where it's almost like, okay, I'm putting it out there and I'm releasing it. Okay, so now we're going to look at moon sign placement in Leo. Now, Leos, yes, you react warmly, generously, enthusiastically. Leo is a sign ruled by the heart, which is wonderful. It's ruled by the sun as well. So there's this kind of almost bigger than life I love you. I'm kind of the big cuddly teddy bear type energy that this individual might show as a child. There's a feeling of emotional security that comes from pride and confidence in self. So this is the individual that really needs to have, if you're a child or you are raising a child who has a moon sign in Leo, they really need to have that kind of, kudos. There needs to be that pat on the back. There needs to be the good job. We see you. And if they what might happen is that when they don't feel that way, like if they, let's say, fall down, or let's give it a specific experience. So let's say they go out to learn how to ride a two-wheel bike, and it just happens to be in front of the other neighborhood kids. And the first time they try, they fall down. And the other kids laugh at this child. Now, what might happen, and I hate to laugh, but what might happen is that this kid, because he is not at or he, she, or however they choose to identify, because in that moment they are not getting the praise, that their wounded confidence will actually react in right away, and they will be the kid that runs right into the garage and closes the door and doesn't try again. So this is really a child that you have to kind of work with, realizing the confidence comes from continuing to get up, even if you fail the first time and others see you and don't recognize you for being as good as you can be. The key to getting past that is to continue to practice, to continue to get back up, to kind of brush it off. There's going to be a lot of, Leo's moon sign placements in Leo, they'll adapt to life by dramatizing, creating new situations, and using humor to entertain others. There's this confident, creative quality to moon sign placements in Leo, and they want to have that larger than life. This is the child who might come home and is like, I'm gonna tell the story, sit down, parents, get ready. And it can be at times where maybe as a parent you might say, okay, sweetheart, that's a little dramatic, okay, or we don't have time, can you just wrap it up? And the moon sign placement child who has a moon sign placement in Leo needs to really have an outlet. This is a child who might need to be put in a drama class. They might need to be placed in a scenario where they can be a public speaker, or where they're the ones who are standing in front of the class, leading a group. They need to have that outlet to be seen, to be heard, and to allow them for that dramatic, creative flair to come through without being told that they're being dramatic, or without being told that that's kind of unrealistic or not actually the way it happened. It's allowing that individual to really kind of, they're a fire sign. They want to feel that fire. Now, the problem that can happen here is that the element of pride and overconfidence can kind of get in the way of their ability to receive. They might be so outward. This is an individual who will probably obviously depending on other parts of their birth chart coming in, but as a kind of, overarching look at an individual with this placement, they're going to be a very outgoing individual. And they might be so outgoing that they kind of run over other individuals or railroad past. This will be the individual who tells their crazy flamboyant story and then does not want to hear someone else's in return, or does not want to hear somebody else's response to it. Same thing with maybe overexpressing of their emotions or what they're good at, but they don't care to be able to hear critique back. So if you are an adult who has a moon sign placement in Leo, this is really about working on how you describe yourself, how you really take a look honestly at what your strengths and your weaknesses are, and how well you are open to constructive criticism. It's hard because everybody doesn't like constructive criticism. It's very rare. I know a lot of people will sit there and say, well, I don't mind it because it's a growth point. But deep within, no one wants to hear that they're not great at something. But where you can really utilize your gifts for being the one kind of on stage, being the one leading the meeting, being the one who gets everybody laughing when they're in that morning meeting that they don't want to be in. That's where your real skills shine, but also being very cognizant and aware that you need to allow others to be able to shine just as brightly. So this can actually look like you really focusing on mentoring others, focusing on going into kind of management training and getting the key skills to really bolster what you naturally have, but then allowing yourself to help bring that forward in others. So I do find that people who have moon placements in Leo can either be just highly creative. You're the actors, you're the people who want to go out there and, tell the story, be heard, have a podcast. But you could also be the individual who is the one who really, you could be the flamboyant teacher who really helps children see the specialness in their experience and also engages them with the stories you tell. You can be the one in a work environment where you are the one who everybody loves to see you be the one to lead, the team meeting or whatever it is. So you can be the fantastic kind of, larger than life mentor for others. So keep that in mind. Okay, so Moon and Virgo. Now, Virgo in general as a sign is a very detail-oriented, exacting, very cerebral sign. So when we have that in your moon placement, you're going to react with a practical adaptation to all stimuli, meaning you're going to respond analytically, and you need a sense of order in the environment to feel comfortable. So this can mean that you're constantly trying to, there can be this element of always wanting to dive deeper. You can't take anything just at face value. This is the devil in the details individual. This is a person who's going to look at, let's say they're coming out of a business meeting as an adult and they were told okay, here's the new project. Now everybody go out there and make it done. But you're the person still left behind saying, yes, but what about this? And yes, but what about this? And and everybody's like, okay, can we just move on? And what can happen is that your positive self-image can actually get tied up in that to where you then feel kind of guilty and you feel this element of self-doubt. And for you, you're just trying to help. You're trying to help the situation. You're trying to be the one who does think through all of the what ifs, the issues that might potentially come up. You are the one who wants to make sure that you get it right the first time. Or if you don't, that you go back and you continue to refine it so that it is perfect at the end, as close as perfect as we can get in this life experience. But then what can happen is that when others in your life are like, oh, it's fine. Just turn it in. It doesn't even matter. And it can get to that point where you're like, yeah, but I think it can be better. And then maybe you do turn it in and then you feel bad about it. Oh, I didn't turn in my best work. Or you feel guilty when you do keep the entire office, an extra half an hour after the meeting, and so that you can go over all the details. Or, you fill in the blanks. So a child specifically who has a moon placement in Virgo, they're going to feel secure through analysis of the physical and emotional world and through making definite, concrete improvements. So this is about really showing that they're showing a child who has a moon sign placement in Virgo that their analytical eye actually can improve things in their environment in a physical, tangible way, which then in turn makes them have an emotional connection to not only their gift for a discerning eye, but also an emotional connection to what they are improving. They feel like they are helping. They feel like they are of service. So Virgo in general is a sign of service. It is the healer of the zodiac. And so an individual too with a moon placement in Virgo might have a lot of trauma around wanting to be of service, feeling like they need to continually do things that are service minded or service oriented, but yet they don't, sometimes it's misplaced. Meaning that, maybe keeping everybody in the office a half an hour later to go over all these details that don't really need to be gone over. Even though you feel you're being of service, it might be, again, misplaced in that moment. So as an adult, it's about really working with the individual, working with yourself to really say, is this something that I can just either A, go home and, kind of draft the email, and I can just send it to my superior, at the end of tomorrow with these questions, just so that I can have a peace of mind and knowing that, yes, I am troubleshooting and helping the greater collective in this way. Or it can also be where you work with yourself to say, am I really being of service by forcing myself to do this extra work? Because sometimes there is this feeling of, working smarter, not harder. And if somebody tells you that your 5-page essay is fine if you just write 4 pages, well, then maybe you just need to take your teachers or your mentors or your managers piece of advice at face value and say, okay, yeah, they told me I don't need to do any more work. It's 4 pages, looks great. I'm going to turn it in, and I'm going to just feel good that I did the best that I could do. So it's really allowing yourself to not be held back by the need to give 120%, and also this need of like continual self-editing, where you're like, but it could be better. It might not be good enough. I might not want to express this just yet because it's not perfect, or it might come out wrong, or I need to like rehash it one more time. So give yourself that beautiful kind of release of, my analytical mind is of service. My ability to pick out kind of the devil in the details will always be of service in any circumstance, but release yourself from the need to bring that back to yourself, meaning that you are continually criticizing, self-criticizing, self-editing, looking at yourself and thinking, well, I could just do something better. I could work out harder. I could look better. I could speak better. I could rewrite this essay 40 times over and just say, no, I'm just going to connect to the feeling of this is, an expression of myself. And I'm going to look for ways where I can continue, again, to be of service to others through my analytical eye, but I'm not going to continually bring that back to me and make myself get to those places of self-doubt because I am critiquing myself on a continual basis. So there's a lot of release that needs to come from personal self-critique with a moon placement in Virgo. All right, so moon in Libra. We have reacts with objectivity to the environment and all experiences with a strongly developed sense of fairness. Now, this can look like the child who is going to stand up and, state very loudly, well, that's not fair. We said that we were all going to get 1 hour to do the project, but little Timmy over there, he gets 2 hours. And where that, obviously we think, oh, fairness, this is great. This is wonderful. How can this be a negative? Well, it can be a negative in that the child might, yes, see something as unfair. They are able to quickly source out the, iniquity in something. But what they don't have then, that kind of certain level of discernment that comes when we get older, where we're able to say, yes, but little Timmy might have a learning disability and that's why he gets the extra hour. Or little Timmy, had something that, just came back from vacation and he needs to get caught up on all of the lessons you've already done over the past 2 weeks. Something along those lines where can be this kind of like almost like call to, but that's not fair. So there can be this thinking before reacting, where they can try to weigh up all of the things before they're actually like able to take action. So there can be this kind of like, it's a double-sided sword a little bit. So with Libra and with a moon placement in Libra, it can be this kind of call to like picking out very quickly what's unfair in an environment. But then there can also be this like inability to make quick decisions. So this can be the child where when you say, hey, do you want to work with this or do you want to work with this? That child's going to sit there and, might ask a bunch of questions, and they might sit there and say, well, I can't just, make a decision. And as a parent, you might be sitting there saying, can we just like hurry it up? Like, it's just this or that. Like, what do you want to do? And what will happen with this child is that they need to be able to feel that they have the time to take in all of the information so that they make a confident decision that they're doing the right thing. Because if they don't have that time to do that, then they will feel like there can actually be this kind of emotional tie to, well, no one cares what I think. No one cares really my opinion. People ask me, and then when I go to finally offer it, they, have already, they're long gone. So this is about allowing that child to have that time to make the decision that's really meant for them. And how you can, as a parent of a moon sign placement in Libra, how you can kind of speed up this process is by trying to give that child as much information right off the bat as possible. Now, they feel secure when involved in close relationships, and they are uncomfortable being alone for long periods of time. So there also needs to be this kind of emphasis on emphasis on allowing this individual to feel that they have the ability to communicate openly with others. So finding... let's see, how can I express this? Which is interesting because I actually have my moon sign placement in Libra. So I can tell you this from my own personal experiences growing up, that yes, there was always this kind of call to fairness. I was very quick to see what wasn't fair. I was very quick to be the one who on the, in the playground would see, be the one who was like, oh, that kid's bullying another kid. He shouldn't be doing that. That's not fair, that kind of thing. But then what also happened from my perspective for me as a child was that often because I had no problem expressing that, I would, be looked at either as a tattletale or looked at as, why are you constantly getting in kind of more of a combative or defensive, stance? Like, why did you have to go stand up to that bully? Why didn't you just go tell a teacher? And so there can kind of be this level of disconnect between you and others where your innate need to express fairness or stand up for somebody else, something along those lines, or stand up for something that you personally believe in because you've weighed up all the odds or all the information, that can actually kind of be off-putting to others because they're going to look at that and say, well, why I can't connect with that. I don't connect with your perspective. I don't connect with what you're standing up for. I don't see it. I see it from the other way. So this is really about, especially when you get older, learning how to share your perspective in a healthy way and understand that fairness really is a means of perspective and allowing others to be able to kind of broaden your field of knowledge and perspective by allowing them to have the opportunity to share what they feel is unfair or fair, or to comment on your observations and perspectives. For a lot of people as well who are going to have this moon sign in Libra placement, there's going to be this emphasis too on wanting to be gracious, wanting to, Libra is a sign that is ruled by Venus. So it's all about beauty. It's all about, enjoying the tangible things in life. And there's going to be this big emphasis on this individual wanting to really be able to kind of come from that place of grace and beauty. But the issue with that is that it can actually hinder, and I like how it's put here, it can inhibit spontaneity of emotional reactions and real intimacy. That there can almost be this point of, I want to be seen as, the gracious host or whatever, but in reality, you're not actually showing yourself authentically in a way to emotionally connect with another, because you're too busy, like, kind of fixated on embodying this beautiful, gracious, everybody should be nice to each other. Everybody should look at the finer things in life. Like, isn't this pen beautiful? And the person might be trying to share their story of what, like, some trauma they just went through. And you're like, yes, but everything is beautiful. And the person's like, what? I'm trying to open up to you here. So also keep that in mind too, that there could be, especially in children, an overemphasis on kind of really trying to kind of either be the peacemaker too, because that can be a strong element of the Libra, that they're constantly trying to be the one that comes in and like placates everybody, and therefore are not actually coming from a place of authenticity for themselves, meaning that they're just trying to kind of placate both sides instead of saying like, actually, mom and dad, when you fight, this hurts me. Or actually, when I'm in class and, I'm stuck in the situation, it hurts me, but I'm trying to just keep the peace because that's what the teacher told me to do. So it's really helping this individual to kind of learn the importance of speaking up for themselves as much as they want to speak up for others. If that makes sense. All right. Okay, so moon sign in Scorpio. So they're going to react intensely, passionately, and controlled emotional power. Scorpio is a sign all about the power of our emotions and really forcefully utilizing that in their experience. Now, I like us as self-image affected by complex, turbulent emotions, confidence sometimes undermined by negative emotions, or support by passionate sense of purpose. Depths of feeling and secretiveness contribute to person's mystique and charisma, which is great. But for those of you who are dealing with, let's say, a child who has a moon placement in Scorpio, this can be the individual who is just, you're never quite sure what's going on, that they are so emotionally deep. This can be where the child might actually surprise you with the level of emotional maturity. They might see something on TV and then, the next day, all of a sudden have this whole like kind of emotional discussion about what they saw and how they felt. And it can sometimes then, because it can come across really passionately and intensely, for a child who is not, as part of their kind of education, who is not taught that emotions are positive things, they can get almost kind of lost in those emotions. There's an element of almost feeling like they can drown in them, that they're just feeling so many things. And there can be this lack of understanding as to why others don't feel as deeply and as passionately and as intensely. And so again, that can affect their self-image, that they might be told like, well, why do you care so much? Or why are you so passionate? That's not even, why do you feel anything about that? And this can really, so it says, a need to deeply penetrate experiences leads to comprehension of underlying motives or to imagining all sorts of fearful motives in others. So this can be that kind of trigger point where they constantly kind of need to go in deeper and deeper and deeper. Yes, but what do you really feel? And this will be the individual, let's say in their adult life, who in let's say romantic partnership would be the one who's constantly like, yes, but do you really feel that way? I know you told me you do, but I don't know if you do. Do you really feel that way? Are you sure you? And the person's like, good Lord, yeah. I'm happy. I love you. That's enough. And the person's like, but do you love me to the moon and back? Do you love me like you would die for me? That kind of thing. And that can be where, when the child is young, that can be obviously off-putting. It can be where they're kind of second guessing other people's motives continually because they're not expressing themselves to the level that child was hoping that they would express themselves to. And so this is all about kind of allowing this type of individual to be in constant connection to their emotions. And a moon placement in Scorpio would be a great artist, someone who needs to have that extra outlet to paint, to write, to dance, to kind of get the emotional goop up and out so that they can kind of see it and so that others can see it and appreciate it as well. They have a healthy way of being able to really show what's very difficult to actually be able to express in words for themselves. It's also healthy to really foster a sense of confidence that although others may not feel as intensely or communicate their feelings as intently, that doesn't mean that they're not feeling that same way, that everyone actually processes and feels emotions differently. Now, obviously, this can be brought forward into your current day adult experience by really realizing that as well, that yes, you may not have the romantic partner who's going to take a scene out of Romeo and Juliet and literally be like, I will pierce my soul if we don't, if we can't be together. But it doesn't mean that they don't absolutely 100% feel as deeply about you as you do about them. They just have a different way of expressing that emotion or sitting with it. Same thing with, let's say, You're passionate about something. You're passionate about a cause, a purpose for yourself. If others around you don't feel as passionately, it doesn't mean that your purpose or cause is less than. It just means that they might feel that passionately about something else. So really understanding that your passion is unique to you, and it does need to be directed. There needs to be this kind of direct direction of your emotional, passionate self. So whether that is art-wise, whether that is just finding like, I'm going to adopt animals and my whole fight in life is going to be my emotional connection to making sure that no animal is hurt or injured or goes hungry or, fill in the blank. But just really understanding that you can trust your emotions to guide your way in that. You can utilize them in a healthy way. And if others don't feel as emotionally connected to that purpose or cause, that you can just kind of let that go. Okay, so Moon in Sagittarius says reacts enthusiastically and idealistically based on beliefs and philosophy. Inner contentment felt when aspiring toward or promoting one's ideals or when progressing toward one's future goals. They feel comfortable when exploring, traveling, being outdoors, loves a sense of freedom. So this is the true freedom lover. This is the child who just wants to go outside and dig in the dirt and be able to like run to the back of the property if they want, or go to the park in the next neighborhood, or they want the freedom and the autonomy to do that. But they also want to be able to develop a core sense of beliefs and really be able to communicate from that place. So a child who has a moon sign placement in Sagittarius is going to be one that might be actually very religious from a young age, or very spiritual, where they kind of see these connections. They might actually want to learn more about a specific religion. They might express interest at a very young age. They also might really like systems and be interested in learning about, let's say, astrology or even mathematics, things that kind of allow them to have a broader sense of order, but also pique their interest at the same time, and give them a sense of understanding something from kind of their own ideology. So you'd want to really kind of foster that element in a child who's like this by exposing them to many different things, exposing them to kind of things that open them up on a spiritual level, exposing them to things that just, really speak to their innate curiosity, but also giving them the freedom to. This is a child where if you have a specific religion, this child may be the child who's going to sit there and kind of fight back on following that religion or following something specific that you tell them to follow. This is the child who in class might not follow the rules because they're going to come back and say, well, from my perspective, that rule doesn't make sense because I don't believe that we should all be sitting separately. I think as part of my ideology, all kids should sit at one big table and share everything. They might be the child who comes across kind of almost like the communist or the socialist, or vice versa. It might be, I think it's ridiculous that everybody has to share. Like, we are individuals. We should be individual, and no, people should not have to be forced to be in groups. So it's really allowing the child to not just force them to say, yeah, follow the rules, because this is a child that needs to know the why behind the rules, and why maybe at this point in their life, although when they get older, they can change and adapt and choose the rules that they follow, that at a young age, this often tends to lead to a more secure environment when we are able to follow certain rules, or give them the outlet that if they do not feel that something is maybe appropriate to their ideology or their perspective, to allow them to have the outlet to share that, so that they could maybe write a letter to their teacher to say why they don't feel like they should be stuck in a group like that, or why they feel the whole class might better be served by sitting in a giant circle and sharing their ideas every day, but giving them an outlet to make it known that their perspective does need to be heard. It is important, but that sometimes rules need to be followed when they're younger because there's additional information or truths to the experience that they are not yet that they have not yet experienced or understand, and that they will get that as they get older, and to not stop questioning and to not stop putting forward their own ideas about what might be better, but to in the moment really understand you can follow the rule and then follow it up with expressing why maybe you didn't want to follow the rule, and how can we make you feel empowered through, again, writing a letter to your local congressperson, or, going out into the neighborhood and maybe telling the kids, showing the kids a new way to whatever, play the game. So there is a way to empower this individual to feel like they are free, to feel like they have an autonomy in sharing their ideology and maybe expressing from that place, but also kind of having to let them know that there are rules that sometimes we have to follow because you don't always know everything yet. And so we kind of have to seek that knowledge afterwards. So if again, follow the rule to begin with, and then seek why it didn't agree with you, and then bring that back and process, because Sagittarius is a sign that is all about seeking the truth, seeking knowledge. Now, as you get older, the beauty of having moon placement in the sign is that you do want to seek the truth. So you do have the ability really to kind of lean into that part of your soul to really look at what is your ideal, what do you want to follow, what makes you feel free, what does not, and then to really kind of integrate that into your life experience by maybe showing others how they could free themselves from certain things that maybe in your perspective are not ideal to the best way to live. And so you share your truth, you share your perspective, and you share how you can free others in certain areas of their life. So it's a really, really neat moon placement for that. Okay, so then we have moon in Capricorn. All right, it says reacts with self-control and determination, sometimes reacts automatically with severe negativity. Now, this is the moon sign in Capricorn can be the sign of the workaholic. This can be the kid who just, I'm determined, I'm going to do it. Like, don't worry, I'm going to sit here all night long, and by tomorrow morning, you're going to see, it's going to be done. And it can be hard because, as a parent of a child like this, you might say, okay, great, we've really instilled a strong work ethic in this child. Fantastic. But where this can kind of become detrimental to the child is that they might feel that they have to continually always push themselves. They might not feel that they have the chance to rest, and they then in turn might kind of have frustration or frustrated outbursts of like, well, I have to do all of this. And it's like, but no, we never said you had to do all of that. You said you had to do all of that. So this is really realizing that the child may take on more than they actually maybe are able to, or they're holding themselves to a self-imposed level of perfection or competitiveness in a specific area that you might not be aware of as a parent, but that they have put on themselves. And so they might be the kid who like at night is just going over continually, let's say they're in a spelling bee and they can't go to sleep because they are going over the words in their mind over and over and over again, because if they don't get it perfect and if they don't win, then they're going to be a failure. and you think your kid's sleeping peacefully in their room, and instead they're holding themselves to this unrealistic expectation. The other, it says it needs to manipulate the world and others in order to feel secure, comfortable, and to achieve one's goals. Can set aside personal concerns to fulfill duties. And this is the number one thing with people who have a moon sign placement in Capricorn, that they can often get to this place of kind of like frustrated victimization, where they're like, I've just been doing it. I've just been putting aside who I am and my emotional needs and getting the job done. How come you can't just get the job done? And it's kind of a realization for this individual to get to a place in their life, especially as an adult, where they realize no one should ask that of you, and you should not ask that of yourself. Meaning, we should not emotionally disconnect from our experience to just get the job done, to just meet the goal. This could be an individual who is continually given goals in a workplace, and they are the one who, stays till 9-10 o'clock at night because, well, that's the goal, right? And yet their marriage or family life is kind of falling apart because they are not, realizing that that's actually what's emotionally fulfilling to them, is having that connection to their family. And they're just so focused on getting the goal done. And then that individual goes home and is like, well, I just had to do it. So I don't know what you guys are all complaining about. But yet that individual might not be happy. Then it kind of translates into, well, why is my family unhappy with me? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And then why is my work unhappy with, I'm here every day until 10 o'clock at night. And it can kind of be this like negative self-fulfilling cycle where this individual never really feels like they are given the kudos for the work that they're doing, for the levels, the standards that they put upon themselves. And yeah, it says, feels comfortable in a role of provider, protector, habitually takes control of situations. So this individual may continually kind of come in. This could even be someone who comes into the rescue in relationships, so they can kind of have this repeat pattern of finding others that they can kind of come in and say, well, I can do it. I can do this for you. I can help you. And then eventually then it kind of turns sour, and that then they're doing everything themselves. And it comes back to then, well, why do I have to do everything? Why doesn't this other person hold themselves to the same standard? So when you're working with a child who has this placement, it's really about letting them know that yes, we do want to obviously do things to the best of our ability. At times we do want to be competitive, especially even competitive with ourselves, but that there is a level when we think about determination, that determination can be healthy, but it can also be unhealthy when it is leading to levels of stress, when you feel that you need to control another's experience, or when you are emotionally separated from the actions that you are taking. So meaning, like, if you are a workaholic, are you getting enjoyment out of the work that you're doing? If you're not, if you're simply just putting yourself through the paces to be better, to jump higher, to do more, but yet you're stressed out and you're not actually enjoying what you're doing, then this is that kind of that internal red flag of, wait a second, I've pushed myself too far. And this is also about working with a child who has this placement, to really allow them to not give them goals around things that that doesn't bring emotional fulfillment for them. So like, don't push them to get into a sport just because that was your favorite sport. And so now they feel like they have to like live up to your standard. And so they will continue to work at a sport that they don't care anything about, or, pick up a topic, let's say English or history or math, that they don't care to continue to pick up. So this is about finding them healthy outlets to, push themselves in, but that brings them that really emotional satisfaction of, I love doing this. And as an adult, this is about really showing yourself, I don't have to constantly be just striving to meet goals just to meet goals. I can meet goals, the ones that I want, but I also don't have to hold everyone to the standards that I hold myself. And I can actually lower my own standards at times. I don't have to be the one that stays till 10 o'clock. I can go home early, enjoy time with my family. And then if I need to, I can go back and work with my manager to say, this was an unrealistic expectation. How can we better, how can we communicate here so that I have more tools at my disposal, or I have a longer deadline or something along those lines, to realize, again, also to realize too, if you're working really hard at something you don't like, that you're not passionate about, that stresses you out, that's like a giant red flag of, you're not putting your strengths in towards the best thing for yourself. So find a new avenue, find a new workplace that could benefit from that work ethic, that high standard you have, or find a new relationship that is more emotionally supportive, so that they too are the ones pushing themselves and you are on an equal basis, instead of you being the provider or the one who kind of controls the situation because the other person can't. Okay, so now we have Moon in Aquarius. We're getting close to the end here, guys. We have, so Moon in Aquarius reacts unpredictably, eccentrically, and with detached objectivity. Feels secure when exercising complete freedom of ideas, self-expression, and innovation. They need to interact socially in order to feel emotionally centered and right about self. So There is this is going to be that kid who's like, can I dye my hair purple when they're like 6 years old? There's going to be that quality to this individual. This is going to be, the child that wants to, hang something crazy from the ceiling in their room, wants to really be able to just be free truly in all avenues of self-expression. When you think about needing to interact socially in order to feel emotionally centered and right about self, this is the individual who is looking to be able to have the freedom to show who they are, but then they need to go out into the world, because Aquarius is the sign of really understanding that we each need to be an individual, and that we need to be confident in showing ourselves in that individual way, but that individual self is directly connected to everything else. Like, we don't live in an island. We can't just, because we want to be, this would be like the child who's like, yeah, but I want to wear like, my big butterfly wings everywhere I go. And yet when they start to go out into the general public, the butterfly wings are constantly getting hit by things and they're getting stuck walking through a doorway. And it's to kind of allow the child to have the freedom to be able to do that. But then once they go out into society, they can say, okay, maybe this wasn't truly of service to the collective experience, that my individuality might be a little, my expression of my individuality needs to be tailored a little bit. Doesn't mean that I can't wear butterfly wings, so that maybe my mom and dad can help me make smaller ones so that they're always seen, but they're there. Kind of like the concept of getting a tattoo. Like, it's always there, but I don't actually have to have like the giant, thing on display all the time. So this is really working with a child like this to really allow themselves to, when they say they want to express themselves in this way, to find ways to allow that to happen. But then also to allow them to be out in social settings where they kind of get to see how they feel about the change or the mode of self-expression. They dyed their hair purple, and when they go out, kids tease them or point it out to them. It's not then to go back and the child's like, no one likes my hair, or like, should I dye it back? It's saying, well, how does it make you feel? If we're constantly worried about what other people's opinions of us are, well, then we'll never do anything authentically. So it's about really bolstering the confidence of this individual to say, if it makes you feel good when you look in the mirror and you see your purple hair, then that's all that counts. If you want to wear little, taped on butterfly wings everywhere you go, and that makes you feel great, well, do it, rock it, But it's also about allowing them to kind of get to that place of understanding that sometimes some modes of self-expression can actually be kind of counter productive to functioning in society, and we just kind of have to tailor it, tone it down a little bit, or pull it back, or find another way to express the same thing, or that tying it back to, if it emotionally makes them feel good and they feel good about it regardless, well, then they don't need to be impacted by another's opinion, a stated opinion. I think Moon, Sun, and Aquarius is truly like the quirky characters we see a lot of in today's television series. The characters who just kind of are themselves no matter what happens. and they put themselves out in a kind of optimistic way into society, into social settings. And even though people might sit there and kind of like laugh at them or joke like, oh yeah, you always do this, they're like, yeah, I know, that's me. And that's a healthy version of a moon sign placement in Aquarius. Okay, and then last but not least, here we are, Moon in Pisces. So it says reacts sensitively, compassionately, empathetically, evasively, vulnerably, and idealistically. Periods of unfocused, freely imaginative daydreaming help bring emotional tranquility. This is the true dreamer. This is the child that just wants to sit and imagine, and there can seem to be a lack of focus. This can be the kid in the back of the classroom who's always like staring out the window. And the teachers are like, focus, where are you right now? And that can actually kind of help, when they're constantly being bombarded with that type of like focus, stop, get out of your head, that can actually really decrease the child who has this type of the moon sign placement of Pisces. It can decrease their level of feeling connected to kind of just everything on a spiritual level. It can also decrease their confidence in just themselves. So it's something to kind of keep in mind. There needs to feel a sense of oneness with the world and the universe to feel secure and right about oneself. Now, the sign of Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So it actually embodies, it's kind of like the alpha and the omega, if you think about it in that way. It embodies all the other aspects of the zodiac. And there is a oneness that comes from the actual sign of Pisces, which are the two fish, one fish going down and one fish going up. So there's this kind of completion of understanding that, you know, we need to be in our emotional selves, we need to be down here in the present and the physical, but then we also have the other side to our experience, which is the upper level of our connection to spirit, imagination, creativity, and we need to blend those all together. And we also then kind of almost lose ourselves in that watery place of we are all one. Now, what can happen with a moon sign, a moon in Pisces, is that that individual can be so focused on that feeling of oneness with everyone and everything, there can be almost like a loss of identity. This can get to that place where they're just so in their own world, they really don't understand the physical and their place in it. And so this can lead to a sense when they get a little bit older of, well, who am I? Where am I? Am I just am I just defined by the person I date? Am I just defined by the work that I do? Am I, you know, there can be this element of trying to grasp at something to kind of anchor them into their experience. And what it really needs to come, like what can help a child with this kind of sense of, or with a moon sign in Pisces and who has this kind of sense of just like, I'm going to go with the flow. Everything is like, I'm just going to today, I'm going to wear my, you know, two mismatched things because I'm not even like aware when I'm getting dressed, what I'm doing, you know, that kind of thing, is to really, focus on bringing the attention back to the individuality of that child, to really say, you know, to keep them in the present moment, but not allow them to not have ample time to live in their imagination. So there's something here where you want to focus the child without saying, hey, focus. It's like saying, hey, you know, I want to see what you like about this. Let's bring this back. Do you like pink or do you like blue? Do you like red or like yellow? Let's talk about right now red and blue. And the kid might be like, oh, I don't care. They're all just the colors. It's cool. And you know, yesterday I was climbing a tree, and it's like, okay, no, we focus. We got to choose, you know, like there's a homework assignment going on here. And that can be then kind of relating, you know, allowing the child to tell you the story of yesterday when they were in the tree, and then saying, oh my gosh, that's amazing. So if you were in the tree, would you rather be wearing, you know, a red hat or a blue hat if everybody could see you from the top of that tree? It's like kind of bringing that child back to, again, allowing them to make decisions and to focus on the present, but focus from a place of them, not just being told to focus, but being, you know, you're allowing the eye of that child to be engaged. So if, let's say, you were a teacher or a mentor to an individual who had a moon in Pisces, this would be like trying to find something that engages them uniquely. If they're the one that's constantly looking out the window, well, what is that child thinking about? It's asking that child, well, what are you thinking about when you're looking out the window? And the child's like, oh, I'm thinking about all the beautiful pictures I could paint someday. And it's like, okay, well, then how about in class, in between assignments, I'm going to give you, you know, a set of paints, or I'm going to give you, you know, a homework assignment, and I want you tonight to paint, you know, what you were looking at, what you were imagining today. And I want you to bring that back in. And it's kind of like adjusting a little bit to the child. I feel like this is like one of the most, because the child can kind of so easily go with the flow. This is really kind of showing where to focus the child on itself, not just like getting lost in what's going on around them or being pushed to focus on something that doesn't engage them. It's about unlocking for this child what actually does engage them emotionally, what actually gives them that anchor to the present. Because this is a child that could actually suffer, and I don't want to sit there and have this like negative component, kind of placed in your minds, but this could be a child that down the line can actually have like strong emotional health issues or even mental health issues where they don't see a purpose to themselves. They don't see, where they fit. They can't quite gauge again what's going on. And that can lead to anxiety. That can lead to an existential crisis. That can lead to someone feeling even kind of depressive or suicidal because again, they're like, we're all just one. So if I just disappear from this world, well, then it doesn't matter. And so this is why it's really important, especially in the younger individual, or if you're an adult watching this, to find that thing that engages you, that emotionally brings you that kind of, what is that anchor that is unique to you? What do you love to do? When your mind is just kind of going off into another world, what is that thing? Like, how can you bring yourself back? If you're daydreaming about something all the time, well, how can you actually engage physically with that daydream? Like if you're constantly like living another life, well, then how can you start to make that other life actually manifest in your present experience? So it's a beautiful sign. I mean, this can be literally loving the child who's ultimately accepting of others, and it can be an adult who is the same, but it's also the individual that needs to really understand the importance of who they are individually and to follow something in their daily practice that engages them with something that they enjoy doing and that has purpose and meaning for them. All right, guys, so we have gone through the entire zodiac wheel of moon placements. I hope this has been educational for you. I think, again, one of the most important things we can know about ourselves is kind of where we can emotionally block ourselves, where we can emotionally feel insecure, where we feel insecure the most about just how we want to react subconsciously and how we just behind the scenes inside are continually kind of, the gears are working in that way. I do feel honestly that our moon sign really is what our life journey and in this present experience, what we're trying to become comfortable with, what we are trying to integrate, where our sun sign is kind of like the path ahead. It's the spotlight. It's our spiritual journey towards something. The moon placement is really us learning to be comfortable with ourselves in that process and how to best utilize those skill sets in a positive way that make us feel authentically heard, seen, and thereby felt. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys all have an interest in looking up your own moon placement and that you really go ahead and embrace it. You go back in time if you're a little bit older to when you were a child. You take a look at how perhaps elements of this do contribute to parts of yourself that you hide today because there was kind of maybe a negative, this part of yourself wasn't supported. It wasn't expressed in the best way possible. It wasn't expressed in a mature way, or that it was completely just kind of stifled because others in your experience just didn't understand what you were trying to communicate and how you saw yourself, and how now as an adult you can kind of see that for what it was, but you can transmute it into something positive and beneficial and utilize it actually as a strength in your current everyday experience. All right, I will leave you all there. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look so forward to the next educational video for you guys, which I think will be about house placements, actually. If you'd like to book your own personal reading, you can click on the link in the description box below to visit my website and take a look at the services that I offer. I will also have a link to this book as well down there because, again, it is one of my favorites. And for anyone who's new to astrology and wants to kind of dive a little deeper, this is a fantastic foundational book. All right, I will see you all in the next video. Bye, everyone.